All right. Welcome everyone to the Flux Dev meeting. Today is Wednesday, the 6th of January, and it's a new year. So happy new year, everyone. You can see that Michael is very excited. Bianca is a little excited. Super. All right. I'm looking at the agenda. The document is here, so please add yourself. Just checking if we had action items from the last meeting. That was December 17th. At least I can't find any actions right now. Cool. Okay, so right now we just have two agenda items. If you have anything, please add it. Thanks a lot, Stefan, for moving Flagger into the Flux organization. This has been a long time coming, and it was quite a bit of work. I saw some of the PRs. Well done. Yesterday, we had a brief conversation because two remaining bits are the logo, and the other one being the documentation and the website. Stefan, do you want to introduce the subjects quickly?
Yeah, so Flagger has its own website, has its own docs website, has its own chart repository. And I've created over time a dozen demo repos, walkthroughs, examples, and so on. So the question is, should this all go away and integrate, I don't know, Flagger into the fluxcd.io website, delete the old website, get all the docs inside the fluxcd docs. The problem here is that Flagger docs are bigger than all of Flux docs. So if we do that, the docs website will look like a Bible. I don't know. Links will be broken and so on. But yeah, if we did this change, we should break everything and do it right. But
I'm okay with it being separate, remaining its own thing.
Yeah, I don't know if CNCF is. The website is on my name. The DNS, I manage the DNS.
That's okay. We can, I mean, if we need to, we can hand that over, but still keep it as its own website, right? Like that's just admin stuff, isn't it?
Well, no, I'm using Gitbook, so I don't think CNCF will pay for that.
Oh, okay. Well, we can ask, I guess.
So that's why I mean, it's not that simple to say, hey, CNCF here is all the things, and
okay,
now you have to pay for them.
Yeah, right.
I'm doing that on my own, so I pay for all of that.
Well, we should definitely either ask CNCF, or we can ask CNCF to pay for it. But if they won't, then maybe Weaveworks will sponsor it. I'm sure. I mean, I imagine it's something that a company could bear pretty easily, right?
Yeah, I don't. The domain is the most expensive thing.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So not too bad. Yeah.
The .app domain. I bought it for 4 years or something like that. So, yeah, in 1 year it will expire. So that's. I'll make a note about that. I also have a reminder and so on, so we don't lose the the domain. About the logo, I mean, I think that's the most urgent thing. Flagger, now being a CSCF project, shouldn't be using a company logo. I was against that from the beginning. I feel like no project should use the same logo as the company, but yeah, for reasons that what we did. But I really want to change that now. And there are a couple of options. We could use the same logo as the Flux logo and change the color from, I don't know, blue to something else, but keep the
Or the
same
text as well.
the
Like the
same design,
same,
or create a,
it could have the same design, but instead of Flux, it could say Flagger. Like the same rhombi
no.
with the arrow, and then it says Flux on it, and the text could be changed, or I mean, and the color, or something like this. I'm interested in making them look like they work together because they work together.
Yeah, I don't think keeping the same color is okay, because a logo shouldn't contain the name of the project. So we don't display Flux under the logo anywhere. That's not how we can do it.
Yeah, it's quite often on its
And
own, isn't it? Just the pictogram bit.
of course,
Exactly.
everywhere,
but I'm just
in
saying
docs,
in
diagrams.
yeah, in the case where the name is displayed, we display the name in a similar way, but change it,
Got
but
it,
also
right.
change the color. Then the name, the color of the text of the name will also have a different color. Yeah, like a green.
So,
Yeah,
Green could be nice.
do you,
I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
do you think, as a sort of, I don't know what the, brand marketing identity type thing, that it's better to use the same pictogram, or to have sort of a very small family of pictograms that kind of obviously belong together? Bianca, what's the best way to go, do you think? Like, given that Flagger sort of already is de facto its own thing, and I think it doesn't need to be subsumed into Flux. It can stay as its own thing and just be part of the project, if you like. So it's okay for it to have its own identity, I think.
Yeah, I think if it has its own identity that's clearly in the family of pictograms that Flux belongs to, that does make sense. But then I'd encourage us to have a quick conversation about that, because currently Flux is two rhombi, right? Two diamonds, one which is kind of the source diamond, which has like a texture on it, with an arrow that moves up to a solid diamond, which is the actual cluster, I guess, or metaphorically some other things. Do you, how do you see what Flagger does depicted in a pictogram that way? I could see the shape itself changing, but that is almost just like the color changing. So instead of going from diamond to diamond, we could go from circle to circle, or from heptagon to heptagon, or something like this, but it doesn't really change the meaning.
So it's Flagger manages traffic splits. So if you look at the Flagger diagram now, it's something that should be something that represents ingress, or I don't know, users or traffic coming from something, let's say a dot, and goes to two other things. Right, so it should be something, two arrows pointing to two different versions of the same app. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember we had a sort of running conversation about what is the sort of high concept for Flux, didn't we? And that it was something like reification.
Yes, and that's what's trying to be communicated in the icon. But I'm looking at the Flagger README right now, and well, there are lots of arrows going to the side, but the arrow that goes up goes to ingress, and then there are two arrows that go down that go to Kubernetes API and Prometheus. Is that representative?
I'm referring only to ingress, service primary, and service canary. And there are 2 arrows if you just take that part of the diagram. So it's ingress, service 1, service 2.
Okay. Okay. So
the sort of high concept of it is like kind of rolling forward through multiple copies of something, maybe, to being slightly less kind of like what it does is redirect traffic, but sort of what it is for is like keeping things up to date. So progressive delivery, right? So I just have in my head this sort of multiple copies of something, and then this sort of progressing through them, going through them, in the same sense that in the Flux diagram, there's a sort of 2 different planes that it's on.
Right.
Similar thing. It's like moving from plane to plane, almost like dump, dump, dump. Is that?
Right.
I'm not the least helpful person ever, but I'm getting there.
I'm happy to just keep talking and throwing out.
Okay.
Like, I realize that a bunch of things that we say might sound stupid and get thrown out, and but it's just about putting out ideas to see if we get to a point that we can create something. So yeah, the thing with Flux is it's kind of touching on the topic of reconciliation, and so the arrow only goes one way. It potentially in Flagger we could have a double-sided arrow, if that makes sense. Or
there's a sort of back and forth. Yeah. What's the best way to progress with this? We could open a discussion in the Flux 2 repo. I think you've had experience with using the discussions thing for kind of design stuff before. Bianca, how did that work? Did you find that okay, or was it a bit clunky, or better to do it in person?
Well, the only thing that really came out of it was a conversation with Hidde personally, and Hidde and I just did it. So, I mean, yes,
okay.
it's not helpful. The result was good, but it wasn't really like community managed. It was just Hidde and I. But that's fine too. I'm happy to just post some suggestions and see how people break them down and think. So then that can be the next step. I'll open a discussion on can I open it within Flux CD/Flagger, or does it have to be within Flux CD?
I think it's
Flux 2 is the one where we have the discussions.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Good to clarify.
Yeah.
It's not very obvious.
There it is.
Yeah, we can talk about it here as well. I just want to make sure that we don't sort of just drop off this meeting without having somewhere to go afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I see the discussions now, so I'll just
Cool.
I'll create one for just the Flagger logo proposals and capture some notes from this meeting on that.
Awesome. I mean, we have loads of time here and not that much stuff to talk about probably, but so we can come back to it if as long as we get through, make sure everyone gets some time to talk about what they want to talk about.
Okay, so moving on, and then we can come back to this if we have time.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have two small reminders where I'm asking for a little bit of help. One of them is I want to get the monthly blog post out this week, maybe even today. I think it would be very nice. A link to the blog post draft on the agenda. And then also there's the Flux Due Diligence doc, which we're working on right now. So this is for the incubation process. We want to move Flux into the incubation stage at the CNCF. So SIG app delivery, we met with them. I think some of you were there at the meeting as well. They basically have this process where we fill out like a huge document, which is also linked there. They just want to make sure they see all the progress and just have the general faith in us as a project. So that's why we go through this exercise. The other bit is that we're reaching out to some of our end user companies. So if you know of folks who have like bigger deployments of Flux in production, just if you want to hook me up with them, and so I can just reach out and ask if they would be interested in talking a bit to the CNCF folks. So I just got the go ahead from Vuk at Deutsche Telekom yesterday. So he's happy to be part of the discussions. So this is where things currently stand with the incubation effort.
Oh, I said I would take a look at the due diligence thing. I didn't do it yesterday, but I'll get a big swatch of time today, so I'll try and do that today.
Super. on
the blog post, Daniel, do you want any, is there a specific ask?
So at the beginning of the draft, I just added a bunch of talking points. So basically this is going to cover like what happened in December. So there was the 0.5 release, the first alpha release of the automated image updates and the guide, and that Flagger moved under Flux. Hang on, there's also the Azure DevOps repository support. Yeah, if you have like some of the sections I already assigned to folks who will have an easy time writing up a couple of paragraphs, but if you have anything to add or want to change anything in there, I just want to make sure that I really portray what happened, and you guys know much better than I do. I'm just making all this stuff up.
All right, so scan for accuracy.
Yeah.
At least, yeah, okay, cool.
Super.
Can certainly do that.
All right, I just spotted that Philip also has an agenda item. Philip, do you want to go next?
Sure, it's just more of a quick discussion. I just want to see what people's opinions were there. So over the last couple of days, there's been a couple of questions regarding different sources for Helm repositories, and I haven't really played around too much with this until now. And the buckets like sources for the Helm controller works, but it kind of does not behave in the same way that you'd expect with like the Helm S3 plugin, where you'd expect it to like be an actual full Helm repository. And Stefan had a good comment for someone who was running some storage in Google Cloud, which was to run chart VCM in the cluster, and then just pointed to the internal service. I ended up having to do this for a customer who was running Helm Operator and then migrate them to Flux V2 and Helm Controller, and they were running a repository in S3. And it worked out pretty well. So I just wanted to see if I actually think this is a better way to go than having to implement every single source in source controller for Helm repositories. I guess this is kind of directed to Stefan. Maybe Hide should also comment on this.
Can you ask again? I didn't hear.
Yeah, so if I don't know how long it was, the issue regarding somebody using GCP and storage there to store their Helm charts, and you suggest you running Chart Museum because Chart Museum supports Google Cloud, and the current bucket solution does not support like proper Helm repositories. It's just individual charts, as if they came from like Git. And my suggestion there is I actually think it's a good idea. And after running it myself in AWS, I actually think it's a better solution to instead, because now the whole OCI discussion is also coming up. People running, oh, I'm storing my charts in GitLab. How do I get Helm controller to work with GitLab, OCI, or ECR, or whatever it is? And I think we should actually, just instead of trying to support every single use case there, look at something like Chart Museum, which actually is one project that does one thing. It tries to support different types of backends, and it actually, from my experience, does it pretty well.
Yeah, I've used Chart Museum with S3 buckets with on Google Cloud. I don't have an Azure account, so I don't know if it works there, but I'm assuming it does. It also works great with Minio if you are on-prem and so on. I don't think people should be using a source controller bucket object to fetch charts, because source controller will download everything and you'll have gigabytes of data over time if you do fast chart releases. And that seems really silly to me to, throw gigabytes of charts between controllers just to fetch one chart.
Yeah.
It's not the right solution at all. So I think we should definitely create a documentation section for this and tell people, hey, if you use cloud storage, look into Chart Museum and use Chart Museum as the Chart Museum repo as a Helm repo in source control, and don't use the bucket. The bucket is meant for when you want to have plain YAMLs there, right? So instead of a Git repo, you can put your plain YAMLs in a bucket, and that it will never get to gigabytes of data because it's always the latest version of your YAML in there. While how a Helm repo works, every time you create a new chart, you'll add that version to the same bucket so it can grow. To an enormous size.
And one of the issues, I posted an example to one of the users there of how you'd set that up with the Helm repository sources and S3. But if it's like, if this is something we can just all agree with, let's say like, yeah, this is a good thing to recommend users who want to have cloud storage Helm repositories. I think then I haven't written any documentation for it just because I don't know if this is something that we would want to recommend or if there is some other better solution for it.
Sounds like a good how-to documentation, like how to.
Yeah, a guide.
Yeah.
So we can create a guide with an example and then link from the Helm release doc, the API spec, to that guide and tell people, hey, if you want to use cloud storage, don't use the bucket type. Here is the solution, a better solution for that. It's part of the Helm organization, is a CNCF project, so I'm all for promoting Chart Museum as the solution for this type of use case.
Great. I will start working on that as I have some free time now.
One more thing I wanted to bring around was, so people are using the image update controller in Flux 2. We fixed some outstanding bugs, and I just made a release right now, 0.58, which contains all the bug fixes in image automation controller. We currently don't have a solution for OCI, cloud-based OCIs, right? When you need to authenticate with the AWS SDK or the Google SDK or Azure SDK and so on. And I think for now we can create some doc where you'll be using a Kubernetes cron job, and that cron job will refresh the secret every 12 hours. And the reflector, the image reflector controller it always queries the cluster for the secret. So if you refresh it from outside, from a cron job, for example, it will get the right token, and basically it will never expire. So it will work. I was reading again the Flux 1 source code around connecting, and and I'm so afraid of it in terms of multi-tenancy. It's so much complicated now, because we've set the multi-tenancy goal from the beginning, and this is not going to work if you just bind all the tenants IAM roles to the same pod. Then anyone can pull whatever image. So I think to unblock users, until we have a good solution and a good design to deal with IAM roles and all these SDKs and so on, maybe we should write a small guide on how you can construct this type of cron job. There are official container images for the Amazon SDK, for the Google SDK, and so on. So it's quite easy to create, a command in the cron job to refresh the secret. And I think we should do that before discussing all the IAM stuff, the actual implementation, to unblock people that are migrating from V1.
Yeah, the IAM thing basically necessitates a different architecture, because you can't. So just to explain that a bit more, what Stefan's talking about, in a multi-tenancy environment, if you want the tenants to have different access to things like AWS resources, then they would need to use different IAM identities. I don't know what the correct term is. But since the controller is just running as one thing, there's no way to run under different IAM identities, because it tends to be the controller pod that gets the permissions. So you need to do something like run some other pod or a job or something and give that the particular roles or permissions for whatever the resource is, the AWS resource. So you can't do it simply, basically, is the upshot. So yeah, I'm all for, if we can either provide good documentation or like helpers, or a combination of both, then that might actually be a better way to go than trying to write the controller to start other processes and what have you.
I think we'll end up with something that looks like a cron job that refreshes the secret.
Yeah,
so
you would end up doing something like that
let's provide a cron
anyway.
job example.
Let's just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Relu, because he
said he
up
was
with
interested
this
in
idea of a cron job.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe he wants to write a small guide. I also think we need to change a little the readmes of image automation controller and the image controllers. And in the first part, link to the guide in the docs. So, because now we have two different things. If you go to the roadmap doc in the website, it tells you, hey, if you want to try image automation controller, go to the repo readme. But we also have a guide on how you can use them together with Bootstrap, with Flux CLI,
we can update
with
that.
everything else.
Yeah. Now we've got a proper guide. Let's change it.
Yeah, I think we should just tell people, hey, go to the guide, don't try all these repos everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I'll make a note to tidy that up for me to do that.
Cool.
I've got a fair idea of where all the loose links are.
Are we going? Is it within the plan of looking at, for example, and also Azure like tokens? Because I know focus has been a lot on AWS and GCP when it comes to IAM, and I know that Azure does things very differently. So it's just something we need to keep in mind if we're going to do weird cron job stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we should figure out a way to refresh the token on AKS as well, right? With the cron job, I'm guessing. No, I know for a fact there is a container image with the Azure SDK, but I don't know how you can use the SDK inside the cluster to refresh the secret.
Yeah, because AAD pod identity is very weird. It does a lot of stuff in networking. It's kind of like how the old cube to IM stuff works.
Stefan, can you just rewind slightly because Relu has just joined, and say the thing you were saying about using cron jobs and documenting it for image reflector.
Hey, Relu.
Hey, sorry, I'm a bit late to the meeting. I was actually curious about the authentication part. I wanted to contribute a bit on that, and I've discussed a bit with Michael before the holidays. So yeah, I'm happy to lend a hand on that if possible.
Yeah. So my ask to you is if you could write a guide in the Flux docs on how you can use cron jobs for, let's say, AWS and Google Cloud. I'm guessing you are, I don't know, used to those two clouds, on how you can use cron jobs to refresh the secret. So to have something, a working example for people so they don't get stuck on migration, because I think it will take us a lot of time to design something inside the controller that works with multi-tenancy, with all the constraints we have. And what I was saying before is, I think in the end we'll end up implementing something like a cron job, because you need to spin a new pod to take that identity to refresh the secret. So until we got there, I think using a Kubernetes cron job is the solution right now. So if you could help us with docs around that, do a little testing, and we can improve the image update guide with the section of, hey, if you are using DCR, GCR, here is the cron job you can create and point to that secret in the image repository object.
Yeah, sure thing. I can definitely help with that.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I made Stefan and Philip, you were having a discussion about a sort of more in-depth bit of that, and I interrupted you.
Yeah,
Please
no,
resume.
it was,
Yeah, so
it's just a pointer of we have neglected like one major cloud provider most of the time when we're building these things. And I think that if we're going to build something that sounds like non-standard, we should just keep it in mind so that we don't just like build something and go, oh crap, this is just doesn't work for Azure.
yeah, I totally agree.
Fair
I
point.
think we should, now that we have Azure's DevOps support, I think the best way to do it is to create a dedicated guide for Azure. Philip, you also added commit status update to notification controller. And I think Azure deserves its own guide where people could use the Terraform provider instead of Flux CLI Bootstrap to get the same Bootstrap thing, but on Azure. We need to add the Git implementation flag to the Terraform, to the manifest package, and then to the Terraform provider, so people can use Terraform to Bootstrap. And I think we should create a guide with, hey, if you are on Azure, here is how you can use Terraform to the Bootstrap, and here is how you can set up commits, and here is how you can create this magic cron job that will update your secrets. Once Michael pulls in the changes that we made in source controller into the image automation controller to use Git libgit2, then we will also be able to patch files inside Azure DevOps, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to this week just catch up on a bunch of documentation I've been neglecting, so it's kind of fitting. I'm just going to try to churn out as much as I can. Hopefully I don't have as much work now during January as I did before in December. So
yeah, okay. But do you think it's a good idea to have
I think it's a good idea to have a
dedicated blog for Azure with all things in there?
I think it's a good idea to have a dedicated page for all cloud providers, because it's the same thing with KMS like secrets, and what I've realized is that when we're writing documentation, for example, for the all the different secret implementations, you go, if you're in AWS, if you're in Azure, if you're, and usually people are like, yeah, well, I need the AWS documentation for this component and the AWS documentation for this component. It's very rare somebody is actually interested in reading about all the different cloud provider implementations for all the different small features that exist. So having a single Azure, AWS, GCP, I don't know if there is a third provider, DigitalOcean, like page. I think that's a very good idea to have a guide for that.
Yeah, I think we should start with Azure because it has the most, it's the corner case, right? In everything.
Yeah.
Source controller needs to do that in, I don't know, with the secret, you need to do some other thing. The Helm repository, you need to do some other thing. So let's start with Azure first and get that right, and then find people that could replicate that guide for other cloud providers. I could do, for example, Google Cloud, because I'm using GKE as my dev cluster, but I'm not using their registry. So, but I think I could do the GCP one. We need to find someone that can do it for AWS as well.
Just because we've got about a quarter of an hour to go, I want to check in with Kevin and Samtachi. Is there anything you want to bring up?
Nothing from my end.
Okay, thanks.
Nothing from my end either. I'm just here to listen in and get a feel for what's happening.
Kevin, is this the first meeting that you have not that you've managed to make without the calendar tricking you.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Brilliant. Happy New Year to both of you.
Happy New Year to you all, folks.
Same to you.
Cheers. Yes, champagne, exactly. Daniel, is there more stuff? I didn't see anything more on the agenda, but is there stuff to bring up? Should we go back to talking about the Flagger identity?
Yes, so Bianca created the discussion.
And I made a logo similar to what we were discussing for us to destroy and break down. Why is this this way? That's what I want you to say.
Right. Why on earth is it like that? Yes. Maybe not that strong.
Yeah, like I just want to keep making quick iterations until we're happy, and we'll get there. So this is what we said: 3 planes, green.
I really like that color. It does look a bit like one better than Flux, though, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Right? And I don't like that. You should write that, and we should address why and try to. Or, like the rhombi could overlap. That way, it looks like kind of a zoomed in parts of the Flux logo. That's another thing that we could do. That could be interesting. Then it doesn't look like one better. Yeah, I'll try that.
Yeah.
But we like the screen.
Thank you very much, Bianca.
I do. I reckon there's a secret color picker that only designers know about, because I can never find the correct, like a good looking color for things.
Well, I mean, so this is, I guess Daniel asked it in the conversation. This is essentially just exactly the same color as Kubernetes Blue, but with the hue shifted to green. So you only touch the hue shifter, don't touch the saturation and lightness. Pro tips.
Yeah, got that one locked away now.
Thank you for the compliment. Yeah, okay, so I'll try some overlapping. Anything else that people have in mind to try? Like, I think that is a really fair criticism. That's what came into my mind as well, that this looks like one better than Flux, which is bad. So
would it be horizontal? Is that, or is that kind of destroying it? Thinking of kind of
I mean,
arrow that sort of branches off to
horizontal, but with the same motif. I mean, I can just turn it and see what we, or should it have to change more than simply being turned?
Let me try and, so kind of, can you see?
Oh, okay.
As a sort of like
the arrows
progression
are going
thing.
Down, so that's
yeah,
negative.
but they're
You
sort
can
of
do the
branching
opposite.
off, and think as it's sort of fading in, like the newer. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I like
new
that.
Version,
but
new version, new version.
Is it okay if the arrows go up? Because that's more.
Yeah. No, that is not okay. No, you destroyed my idea.
I'll do one
You've
of
destroyed
those.
it.
I'll do one of the overlapping ones. This is just exactly what I want. Like, for us to just shoot some random ideas without too much commitment. And
I guess you could do it
make
like
a bunch of sketches, and then we'll get to that point.
Actually, that may even work better in the same orientation. Like, you know how Flux is sort of like, the idea is the arrow points up, it's sort of ascending the plane to the real world. You could have the same thing, like the progression of blump, blump, blump. It gets more and more real. So just the same thing, but it going upwards. See what I mean?
Oh, okay. But then the arrows are going to the
The
right.
left or right, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of things to try. I just need to make note of all of them. Good. Let's do that.
One thing to keep in mind that the horizontal one will not look okay on diagrams on GitHub because or Twitter or anything else because it needs to be square. Right.
I
So
would
if
still
we
produce it
make
as
something,
a square. But
yeah, I know,
it
but
would
there
feel
will
a bit
be a
empty.
lot of
Yeah.
space, right?
The way I've drawn it, it's very flat. The aspect ratio is not great, yeah.
But I like the side arrow variation that we can try as well.
Sorry, where can we see the logo? I'm not sure.
I'll put a link in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, the link I put was in the doc.
It's already in the chat. Yeah, so that discussion. Some touchy. That's
Yeah, I've seen it. Thank you.
got it. Cool.
One other thing, Daniel, could you add Flagger to the homepage of fluxcd.io, like I don't know, under the GitOps toolkit or something like that, with some small text and link to the doc. So we have something there until we decide what we do with everything else. I created an issue in the website repo.
Yes,
and I've also linked to the main. Yeah, you could just take some parts of the text in the current website and put it in fluxcd.io, and the link should point to Flagger docs only. We don't need to link it to the other homepage.
So you would like to see a section just like the GitOps toolkit, which has like the guy with the building blocks, something like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I can experiment with that. Sure.
I don't know if we actually need a big image like.
I mean, we could just put
the GitOps toolkit has
a diagram in there or something. Like I'll play around with it. I'll let you know how it goes. No
yeah,
worries.
Another idea will be to link from the docs website, or I don't know, create something like that says progressive delivery or canary deployments or whatever, and link back to the Flagger docs. I did that in the Flux V1 website just at the beginning. Maybe Michael, you could take a look if you like that part. I can place it in the homepage of the V2 docs. Let me give you a link to that.
I think it would be nice.
In here, So in here in V1 docs at get started, there is a phrase or for progressive delivery, blah, blah, blah. Flux can be used together with Flagger. And that's the link to the repo. And instead of having the link to the Flagger repo, we should link to the doc site directly.
Sure.
Definitely agree with that.
Sure, it's possible. Yeah.
I think it could be more prominent in the, but if you're thinking about the kind of landing page for the documentation landing page for Flux 2, then I would say that's kind of a redirection page in a way. It's like, why are you here? Are you here for this? Okay, go that way. Are you here? Here is another thing, So I think it's reasonable to have a bit more text and a bit more prominence for leading people away to Flagger if that's what they're interested in, and for it to be above the fold.
I think the same goes for the FluxCD main page. Like, I think the website should like talk about like what is the Flux family of projects.
Yeah, sorry,
like,
I actually meant
what do we try to
I
do?
meant the homepage rather than the docs page, which is what I
Right.
said.
And then a link off to like, if you're here for the V1 family, here are the links, and here's Flagger, and here are all the other bits.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll file an issue for that. Like for now, I'll just add Flagger prominently and change the other link in the current V1 docs.
No, you can leave it
issue
like that in the V1 docs. It's okay. We can not update the docs if we don't do a release of Flux V1. So only if we know that we are going to do a V1 release makes sense to update the docs, because otherwise they will not be updated. It's all sandware. So I think if we start with the current website and the landing page of the toolkit.fluxcd.io, which is the doc site right now, I think we are good. Until we have the logo, I'm going to have to change all diagrams. It's going to be a lot of work.
I hope it will be the last time.
We'll get there.
Yes. Yes.
Not to make enemies, but is there a way that we could silo the documentation for Flagger within the Flux website so that it doesn't look like all of the because there's just so much more Flagger docs as far as I understand. Could it exist within the Flux doc, but kind of like under its own folder? I know that's still a ton of work, but semantically, that's what feels like makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's how the meeting started, right? The end goal will be to merge everything once a Flagger version 2 is released, and it can be installed with the Flux CLI, works with Flux notification controller, and so on. At that point, I think it makes total sense to merge everything under the fluxcd.io website. But until then, I will just keep it as this separate docs website, but not the with cross links somehow to enrich both stuff until we get Flagger V2 out. It's going to be months from now.
Thanks for clarifying again. That sounds really good. That makes sense.
Yeah, I brought it up in the contributors channel, but I think what we could do for now would be like, I think the CNCF is going to ask for the domain to be transferred. I think that could be an easy step. They asked for it in the due diligence process again. So that could be done. And then I think if we start by drafting up how we want the URL scheme to look, like which documentation we want to live where, I think if we have that decision, like we can, it's going to be lower priority, but then we can start working on it once we know what goes where, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think we have to create a roadmap similar to what we've done for Flux V2, for Flagger V2. And yeah, reference everything there, all these steps.
It's true. People are going to want to know what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, does it mean this? Does it mean that? Does it mean I can't use Flagger without Flux 2? It's worth answering those questions up front, isn't it?
Yeah. I had people asking on Twitter when I announced, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to move Flagger and so on. There are a couple of people that messaged me and asked me, hey, I'm using Flagger with Argo, or I'm using Flagger with Jenkins X, or whatever is going to work afterwards, after the move. And yeah, it works because Flagger has its own domain, and that's why it works. Nothing changed, basically. All the charts are the same, all the install steps and so on. But in version 2, some bits will go away. For example, I'm for removing all the notification bits in Flagger and use Flux notification controller. That means, yeah, those that are using Flagger standalone will lose a big feature. That's quite important if you do progressive delivery without alerting. It's not going to work.
I mean, the deployment will be a bit more complicated, but they will still be able to get that function. They just run the notification controller as well, and maybe change the config a bit.
Yeah, it will be it will be a breaking change in the API, in the installation, and everything.
Yes,
but
sure, but they will still have all the stuff they had, just in a different configuration.
A last thing I want to bring up. So Michelle asked us if we can have all the things that we mentioned in docs in terms of demo repos and so on, to move them inside Flux.org. And there is one project I hadn't moved. It's still on my personal GitHub account, is the Source Watcher. That's part of the guide on how you can extend Flux using the toolkit components. And I'm going to move Source Watcher today or tomorrow. I need to update it to the latest FluxCD packages. And then I'm going to move it under Flux.org and change the docs, small changes in links and everything else. But she has a point. That's the main guide on, hey, how you can extend it, and that's not inside FluxCD. What my issue around demos and example repos are around the fact that we have this pull request flow, right? I cannot create a pull request and merge it myself. I have to ask someone to review it. And having so many example repos, I have to, annoy someone.
We should make a carve out in the governance, even if it's just explicitly listing, saying these repos do not have to have like double approval process.
Yeah, there are small changes in most of them, but I really want to keep the demo repos up to date, because people are using them, and if we don't keep them updated, then there will be a big problem. So I'm trying to do that with GitHub Actions. For example, for the multi-tenancy repo, I've built some actions that are keeping Kyverno and other components up to date, and I'm running end-to-end tests and so on. So I can merge that because it's the FluxCD bot that opens the pull request, so I can approve it. But the manual ones, I have to, wait for someone to see it. So I think, I don't know, how should we go about it? Create a discussion with a proposal to have an exclusion list for the pull request workflow.
Yep. Okay. If you know how to word it, then just make a PR, I think. But if you're not sure how to word it, then open a discussion and we can figure that out.
Okay. That's it from me. And
Super.
We are up.
Any last bits from anyone? All right. Yeah, thanks a lot, and see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.